Welcome to the August 8th edition of Sit Down with the Chief. I'm Chief Reporter Bob Henley, and I'm speaking with our editor, Richie Steyer. Rich, you have a page one story about a beef between the PBA and the Uniformed Union Coalition led by Roy Richter, the Captains Endowment Association's president, that's generated a lawsuit. First, who makes up the Uniformed Coalition, and what's at issue in the lawsuit?
Basically, the Uniformed Coalition consisted of all the superior officer unions in the police department above the rank of police officer. It also included fire officers, included superior officers in the correction and sanitation departments. Notably, it did not include the PBA, nor did it include the sergeants union in the NYPD. That was the one exception among the superior officers unions, and did not include the Uniformed Firefighters Association and Correction Officers Benevolent Association, each of which represent people at the entry level. The beef goes back to a pledge that Labor Commissioner Bob Lynn had made when he reached contract terms with the Superior Officers Coalition in December of 2014 on a contract that provided 11% in raises over 7 years. All the unions that were in the coalition were wary of the possibility that the PBA might come in and do better than that in subsequent negotiations or through arbitration. And Bob had basically told them that they would not have to worry about the terms being exceeded, that he intended to hold the PBA to the pattern that was reached. And ultimately, on the actual cost to the city, he was able to do that. What has those unions upset is that the PBA agreed on something that would provide an additional 2.25% raise for its incumbent members that is being paid for out of the hides of people who haven't yet been hired, those who are generally referred to as the unborn. The city is basically reducing the pay scale for future cops so that they will be losing a significant amount of salary they otherwise would have been receiving in order to fund that 2.25% increase. And it's something where the unions went into court. It seems unlikely they're going to prevail simply because on the math, the city happens to be right. At the time that the PBA deal was reached in late January, Roy Richter, who is the chairman of the Superior Officers Coalition, did not quarrel with the math, did not say that it exceeded the pattern. What he did express concern about was that he was arguing that police officers who are hired in the near future are going to be making the equivalent of $20 an hour, which he said would be coming at a time when you would have McDonald's workers making $15 an hour, and he was worried about the impact that that might have on recruiting. The argument that the PBA has made over several contracts in which it has done something like this, of slashing the pay scale in order to get more money for incumbents, is that it is not obligated to bargain for people who it doesn't yet represent. Now, what bothered Lynch was that in the court papers, the Superior Officers Coalition had stated flat out that they had been told that Bob Lynn was going to maintain the pattern. And he said that that proves that the uniformed unions, besides his own, in his words, conspired to limit the wage increases for the PBA.
Something suspected but never in black and white.
Well, yeah, and beyond being just suspected, it's something that mayors have, going back at least to Ed Koch, have sworn by the importance of pattern bargaining, and so that complaining that they've admitted it is sort of the equivalent of Captain Renault in Casablanca saying that he's shocked to discover that gambling is going on. It's an open secret, let's put it that way. And so that, in essence, you've got two sides blowing off steam. I'm sure that basically what happened was that there were people in the members, rank and file, in the Uniformed Coalition who got upset about that extra 2.25% and have been blowing off steam about it. And I think that the coalition members thought that it was easier to transfer their ire towards the city rather than towards those union leaders themselves. I mean, the problem that you've run into in the past for the superior officer unions is that when the PBA has gone first and set up a pattern that was structured the way that the current contract is, that those unions then had to find a way to get the same raises for their members or risk political fallout. And what they would be forced to do was agree to givebacks, sometimes givebacks that were more costly than what had been made by the PBA, simply because they have more stable workforces, and so the turnover is less, and as a result you have to give up more. And very often they would find themselves getting voted out of office as soon as enough people got screwed over by the reduced pay scale, and so that wasn't working well for them either. And so they stopped waiting for the PBA to set a pattern, decided to go in and set their own, with the notion that the city was not going to exceed that pattern. And you still have people winding up unhappy, but I think that all of this amounts to sound and fury that is not going to have a big carryover effect, other than just cementing some resentments between union leaders that have existed for at least the last dozen years.
Well, that's it for this week's edition. We'll see you next time for our August 23rd edition of Sit Down with the Chief. Thanks, Richie.
Sure thing.